I think David Leaman first.
I think I'd rather answer questions. No, it's a good question. I think it's probably more constructive if you ask me what you'd like to know, and I'll do the best I can.
What's the figure that we should be working for, the sort of percentage of, say, the catchment that should be planted for plantation?
In the case of the St. Pat's, certainly no more than 20%. But that's a number I'm pulling out of the sky. For some catchments, it should be 0%. I would argue for a lot of the north-east, it should be a lot less than 20. The actual number that you would use depends on what you want to use the water.
You got to press the button.
Press the button. Yeah. Depends on what else is required of the catchment. So that in some catchments that I've looked at, you might be able to sort of use all the water up for whatever you like. But there are others, and I would say if you take a lot of the catchments in this region of Tasmania and in the northwest, you've got competitors for the water. And the competitors include forest industry on the one hand, other industries, towns, individuals, farms, all of that. And unless you add the whole lot up, you can't decide what it is you should do. And it may be that when it comes to a forest industry which is this sort of mess, it's zero. And I would argue for a lot of the catchments from this side of Burnie down, it should be zero. For a catchment like this one, the mismanagement shows up in Launceston. Anybody who's going to spend money on levee banks without fixing this up is wasting their money, utterly wasting your money. So there's no simple answers to it, but you can work out what it might be.
You're talking about floods there.
More than 20%.
I'm saying you're likely to go dangerous.
So what is the current percentage, David, do you know?
In the St. Pat's, the best numbers that I can see is around 30, and in the North-Esk, it's a similar number. And when we're talking about the catchment like this, you've got to be very careful when government uses the word catchment, because they have a legislative term called the catchment. And the catchment in Tasmania, some of you will find this hard to believe, but there are only about 50 catchments in Tasmania, according to the government. And you realise immediately they say that, something funny's happened. Because catchments occur at all scales. And that sort of percentage number I was quoting really has to work at your level of your catchment. So if you actually live here, you have to ask, what is your catchment? And it's literally the local creek. And if 20% of that disappears, you notice it. So it's an all-scale thing. But the government system, for example, is not the yellow lines on this map. They're creative numbers. They include various, for example, the one that I really enjoy quoting is Douglas Apsley. That's called one catchment. It's got two rivers in it. Quite apart from everything else, it includes other things like streams of Coles Bay and whatever else. It's just administrative nonsense. So forestry, for example, is able to say, oh, we've only altered 5% of the North-East catchment, because the 5% is of the land area of the legislated catchment, not a real catchment. There's a huge difference. And the important thing to realise about catchment like this one, which is the sort of effect of the yellow line here, is, I was using the word to somebody else earlier, it's the generating capacity. The water in this catchment is not generated here, it's generated up there. And on Rose's Tier, which is the wettest part of this catchment, as far as we know, the rainfall was about 1,400 millimetres. It is dropping. The last 30 years have seen 10% or more fall off that. That's a trend on that. That starts to become a lot of water. 10% of 1,400 is a serious long-term trend. Down here, the average long-term rainfall is about 600. And on the way to Launceston, nothing much else happens. The river loses water between here and Launceston. It will do so naturally. This is not the generating region. It's up there. Now, if you do things up there which affect that generating capacity, or the capacity of the river to deliver water to here, which is then on set, then you've done a lot of damage. And that's the work. The long-distance supply, the intake is further down here. We were fairly close to it, the bridge. But basically, no, long-distance is not taking water from the dry section of the catchment, it's taking water from the top section. So in fact, if you modify this, that's your water supply gone. And it's going anyway. I don't know where the bottom line is in terms of the climate trend. Nobody does. The shift is happening here. There are seasonal shifts here, which are taking away basically autumn rains and not restoring them at some other season. That has a really serious effect on the river system, because it's winter when we as humans and the plant system are not taking water, that the whole water system recovers in our climate. Now, if the input isn't there in autumn to allow top up through winter, when the demand goes on in spring, which is us and everything out there that's growing, it is not necessarily there. And what this actually means is, and this is the irony where I enjoy it, is that those bloody little trees are not going to do too well. There isn't, I mean, they haven't thought this through. You can see a lot of this when you look around at the plantations and the amount of wood many of them are not putting on. They're not being grown, being grown to mine money, not to mine wood. But
It's called make-believe.
yeah, but on the other hand, they've got to make it look like they can produce the wood for this grand scheme, which means more and more area has to be made to look like it. So it's a double whammy. But the great irony is those things are soaking up the water that would otherwise run free.
So if it's the mining money, not mining wood, at some stage, the excrement's got to hit the excavator, doesn't it?
I don't think that's quite likely. But unfortunately for us, as Frank pointed out, the damage has been done. The water system will not recover quickly. The forest system will recover even more slowly. I was asked, I think by Four Corners years ago, how long I thought it would take, and I said at least 500 years of very careful rotational working to sort of bring back a balanced forest water system. I think if we were realistic, ain't going to happen.